Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today's guest is Kyle Gervis. Kyle is a contract climber out of Victoria, Australia, and also the man behind ARBFIT, sharing information on everything from strength, flexibility, movement and breathing, sharing, and I quote, a better way to live and work. I personally wanted to have a big chat with Kyle because he shares some great info that I think will be super valuable to anyone out there on the tools. So with that, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. So from my research / stalking on social media, you have experience in strength and conditioning, some free running and parkour, movement and flexibility. You're obviously a contract climber. And you also mentioned to me before that you'd been a personal trainer in a past life as well. So I think that gives you a very unique perspective on looking at what people are doing on the job site on a day-to-day basis. So can you take me back and share your experience on how and why you created ARBFIT?
Yeah, sure. In short, so after working in ARB for, 4 years, started to get an idea that a lot of people within there are sort of broken. There's a lot of my mates have had back issues, elbow issues, knee issues, and I thought a lot of it could be and should be prevented. Really, it was with a little bit of maintenance, those issues could have been avoided. Really.
Okay, then. Yeah, for sure. So now what I was thinking is because from my perspective, being in the ARB industry as a climber and then also doing some rigging work as well, like both of them, you're in a harness, they are highly strenuous, stressful jobs, they're hard work. And I personally had to spend a lot of money at a physio getting dry needling done on my ITBs down the sides of my legs, which was excruciating. And lots of it was like remedial work to fix myself so that I could get back to work.
Yeah.
Which is when I saw your content, and then it immediately flicked a switch, and I suppose it just made a hell of a lot of sense. So you sharing the information which you do, I was like, okay, then this is going to help people out there.
Yeah, hopefully. That's the main kind of goal, is just because it's a really hard job. It's a hard industry in general, and anything that I can put out and share the knowledge that I have to potentially help those in it, the better, really. And as you said, most of the guys in ARB are kind of, as they get an injury or as they get an issue, they fix it after the fact. Whereas prevention is always better than, a fix after the fact.
Yeah. So where did your physio work kind of come into it? And did you then take stuff from your physio work while you were being a climber and going, okay, then I'm going to try implement X, Y, Z from my previous career and bring it into what I do now?
Yeah. So I was never physio, but I did a lot of
Sorry, my bad.
And I did a lot of rehab stuff, basically on myself, because during my training history, I've broken myself numerous times. So I've had to kind of figure out how to put myself back together to get back to the kind of performance that I wanted. And over breaking myself so many times, a pattern emerged that there's certain things that you're worthwhile investing in before it happens. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so by by breaking yourself, was that like muscle, ligament, bones, all of the above?
all of it.
Yeah,
um,
okay.
like I've shattered my left elbow into like 3 pieces.
Oh,
Uh,
Jesus.
tore the tendon off my right and the cartilage along with it. Um, both my knees have had like knee tendonitis from jumping and heavy impacts. Uh, Collarbone's been broken, knuckles, nose, well, yeah, a whole bunch of things.
And was any of that industrial, or was all of that kind of recreational activities?
Yeah, all of that was recreational.
Just for fun.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
by the time we got to ARB, I'd kind of learned my lesson,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, kind of, yeah, made sure that I stayed on top of just maintaining myself, so that
Okay.
didn't happen again. Really.
Cool. So, what was it that you took from having to put yourself back together from being broken? Like, was there any thing specific that you went, okay, I'm a climber now, and I can see a pattern emerging, like this is going to happen again because of X, Y, Z. So I need to start doing whatever it is.
Yeah, it was basically the awareness of when a physical sensation became too close to pain,
Hmm.
really. Like discomfort is fine. Your discomfort's good in a lot of ways. But if you cross that threshold into pain,
Hmm.
you can basically be sure that you need to do the work now, immediately. Ideally before it crosses that threshold. Um,
Okay.
so there's been a lot of times where lower back, for instance, all day in the harness, lower back has really, really seized up and it's been quite uncomfortable. And you know that if you keep on going, it's going to cross that threshold. So it's just having that kind of awareness of being like, all right, just stop what you're doing and fix yourself, really.
Okay. So pretty much, well, everyone that's essentially climbing for a living, um, they're going to be in a harness.
Yeah.
And I suppose the good thing about the harness is obviously it creates your work position. It also suspends you at times, etc. But then I suppose on the opposite side of the coin is it's potentially that crutch for you as well, which means that it's like the back brace, like putting it on beforehand, which means that you never actually build the strength within that area to be able to deal with the strains which you're having to deal with. So is that a big element that you then go, okay, I need to do XYZ exercises to compensate for wearing a harness?
Yeah, there is a bit of that. In general, I haven't really thought too much about the harness. Like you, I've been thinking more about the specific movements that we do within the general workload. Like within the being in the harness is kind of, you know, just part of the job, but
Mm.
the movements within the job make quite a difference. Like we do a lot of reaching horizontally, and but actually now that you say it, the being in the harness does create a lot of issues because that is now your base of support.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, reaching horizontally, trying to deadwood a limb,
Mm.
tip tip deadwood or something. Your base of support is now in the center of your body. So you've got to actually have the conditioning and the strength and the control within your lower abdominals to actually make that your base of support. Which, without a lot of kind of not so much practice, but awareness of what's going on there and how you can increase or decrease tension in certain areas, it can get a bit tricky. Yeah.
Okay. Can you go into, because like when I picture it in my mind, if somebody's heading out on a limb to do some deadwooding or some weight reduction, whatever, on the end of a branch, like thinking about it from what you've just said, it like the penny literally just dropped then, in that you're 100% being suspended by the middle of your body, by your waist. And I suppose if you think about how animals would run across a tree branch, they're using their hands, their arms, their shoulders to support the front half of their body, and their legs, knees, hips to support the back half of their body, which is completely not what we're doing. So completely different, which means that we need muscles in different areas. But can you expand on all the odd movements that we end up subjecting ourselves to because of the nature of the industry that then you have to kind of remediate?
Yeah. Spikes for one.
Yeah.
Whenever you're in spurs, that's
Yeah.
a super position. Your knees are just like kind of, they're in a weird position. They're going to kind of cave in. They've got to kind of extend and rotate outwards. It's a position that you're not usually in, and there's not a whole lot you can do outside of being in spurs to actually strengthen that area. You can definitely stretch it and get more mobility and get more kind of resilience in the tissue.
Yeah.
But the actual strength of it, you can do it, but they're fairly tedious exercises.
Yeah. Okay then. Yeah, because that was my trouble, was from climbing. If you're on a big barrel, if you're taking down like a large tree and you're on your spurs, your knees are cranked outwards, probably like, it's not even like a 90-degree angle, it's more like 120 degrees outwards. And you've potentially got the weight of a big saw, like 66 or something, or bigger even, hanging off the back of your harness. So all that load is going down through these cranked out knees and these cranked out ankles. And then say if you're taking off blocks as opposed to kind of scarfing them over, pulling them over, and you're having to physically push against them to get them to move, then that's putting all of that extra load all the way down through that same column onto these cranked out knees. And I suppose humans haven't evolved to walk like John Wayne.
And because those legs are so cranked out, and they're not going to give you a whole lot of support. So to get that block to move, it's mostly your abs. Like,
yeah,
you really brace from your abs and just heave with your force to it, really.
Okay.
Which is, again, really, really hard.
Yeah. So I suppose the one thing that you first brought up was going out horizontally on limbs, having to stabilize your core because you're in a harness. So that's your core. And then being on spurs, if you're pushing against big blocks, that's your core as well. Yeah. What other exercise or what other movements are people doing that are then creating like these differences in the way we're having to move because of the job?
Raking. Like, if you're on the ground, raking is a fair bit of torsion, but it can be really good. Like, it depends on how you're doing it. If you logs, if you're on the ground and you're lifting up the blocked off pieces of wood, you want to know how to do a proper deadlift, proper squat, all that kind of stuff. Because over time, if you do have that little bit of rounding in your back, it's not necessarily the worst thing for being a rounded back, but over time, that load, because it's spread out, well, it's not spread out, sorry, because it's isolated in the furthest kind of peak,
like the
of that
apex of the of that bend.
that's just putting a hell of a lot more force on that spine. So if you
Yeah.
can avoid that and just learn the basics of a squat and deadlift, your career is going to be a lot longer, really.
I
And the
suppose
same
that's. Oh, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
principles apply for when you're in a squat and when you're in a deadlift. Those movements will transfer up the tree. There's so many times where if you have the proper mechanics of a squat and deadlift, you could be on the ground or you could be up the tree, but those movements are universal and they carry over very, very well.
Okay. Which is a funny thing because I didn't even think about that. Like you think of a squat and a deadlift coming from like a solid base coming from the ground. You don't think of it from coming from being up a tree in a harness with a different suspension point. But no, it's good to hear that, like, I suppose one exercise can also benefit you, not just on the ground, but in the rest of the areas which are having to work. But
Yeah.
when you started going, okay, then I'm climbing, I'm an arborist, I'm also doing groundwork as well. Was there like the first exercise that you added to your daily routine that you went, I think I need to do this, that started to benefit you?
Yeah. It was to do with the core. Like before that, I didn't do a lot of kind of specific core work. I just had a decent core from all the other kind of movement activities that I participated in. But having just the bird dog is an exercise.
Okay, you're going to have to talk us through this.
There's the bird dog and the dead bug. Those are the two that are
Okay.
Basically, you start out on all fours in a tabletop position.
On your knees and hands or feet and hands? Okay.
Knees and hands to start with, and you raise your right hand and left leg up and back. So you're getting that kind of that diagonal line from your right hand to your left leg across the back, across that kind of main myofascial sling along there, and then you do this opposite.
Okay. Which one's that? Is that the bird dog?
That's the bird dog.
Okay, awesome. Right, I'm writing these down.
The next level to that is, you do take your knees off. You hover your knees because that's going to increase or decrease stability, basically.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to decrease stability, especially in ARB, is going to help when we're talking exercise-wise.
Okay, then. Yeah.
Anything when you decrease stability, all the tiny little musculature has to ramp up, and they're the ones really responsible for keeping your skeletal system tense and locked, but also being able to shift while you're there.
Okay, then. So this is really harping back to away from the time when people would use very specific machines in the gym, which would isolate a muscle or a muscle group. It's moving away from that, and it's actually more like the quote unquote farm fit or farm strength, where it's where people are just solidly strong. They don't look like a bodybuilder, but they look like, I suppose the best way to describe it is like what you would imagine a fit, strong caveman to be back in the day. Just solid I suppose, as the name suggests, like a farmer that's worked for 10, 20 years solidly, and just every part of their body is solid and strong and firm. But it's not a bodybuilding physique. It's different to that.
If you think of like the ultimate body that I would aspire to would be Tarzan. Like,
Yeah, that's a good, that's That's a good description analogy. Yeah.
He's going to be ripped. He's going to be massive, but every single muscle on him serves a purpose, and its purpose is honed completely.
Okay. So that's what we're trying to look for, to then create the stability so that you can then go to work and not do the injuries that we're probably more prone to because of the industry. Okay.
Yeah. By doing those kind of movements that increase instability, increase kind of connection between the brain and the body, like just by decreasing stability, the connection between your brain and your body increases. So anything you can do to strengthen that connection is always good. So that's why machines aren't that great, because you're doing the movement, but you're missing out on that extra layer of connection, which is the instability.
Okay, then, because if you're using a machine in the gym, it creates a very fixed movement. It creates a stability around you, and all you have to do is use one muscle group to use the pec deck or whatever whatever machine you happen to be sitting on.
Like they can be really good for just increasing total force generated.
Right.
But us, generally, we don't need just total force here. We need total force here, up through the bicep, forearms, wrists, down into the lats, down into the abs, into the adductors, down into the calf. You need it all to connect.
Yeah.
Because
so everything you're doing is essentially a whole body exercise.
Ideally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing you implemented, did you say, was the bird dog, which was the on your hands and knees, lifting your right hand, left foot,
that kind of stuff, and
left hand, right foot, dead bug. Sorry, we need to go into this.
It's essentially the same thing, but you're flipped around. So you're on your back, trying to have your tailbone kind of slightly tucked under, so your lower back's kind of flat on the ground. And again, knees are just above the hips, in line with the hips, and arms are straight up. And it's the exact same thing. Right arm goes back, left leg goes out.
Okay, then.
And you're really trying to feel into your pelvis, around those lower abs. You're trying to take note of when that lower back kind of wants to unflatten. So,
and create that dip in your spine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Someone wants attention. No, that's so good. Somebody was getting bored outside. Oh, too funny. Okay, so you implemented the bird dog and the dead bug into your routine. So was this like every morning you would do X number of reps of each one, or every evening, or how did that look for you?
In general, I will go by feel. Like I don't do that well with programmed kind of exercises.
Yeah.
I get bored real easily.
Okay.
So, and I've got enough kind of experience that I can go by feel and just modify it as I feel.
Okay.
But I would, most of the time when I was doing a dedicated movement session, whether it be like mobility or strength, I would chuck them in there just to get that increased awareness of what's happening around my lower abs. So sometimes, like, I may be doing a strength session, but those two exercises, they might not be strength focused. They might just be a check-in.
Okay.
Do I still have correct an adequate amount of control there? And
Okay.
if I don't, why?
Right. See, I think your level of awareness coming from the background which you have, like, equals you can do that, and you're very, I'm guessing, very conscious of your body, the differences when it's performing differently to how it, quote, normally does. So for the inexperienced person that's out there on the tools, that knows that they're having a bit of back trouble, that knows that they can feel a twinge, like it hasn't gotten to pain, but they know that there's something which isn't quite right going on there. Would you recommend, how would you recommend implementing these sorts of things?
Yeah. So for the dead bug, the one that you're on your back, I would recommend using it as an assessment tool primarily. See how much range you can actually control. See how far your legs can actually go out and your arms can go out while maintaining that flat lower back.
Okay.
And once you've gauged that assessment, once you've kind of got to your range and you're finding it really difficult to hold that lower back, that's where you work from, and then do fairly high repetitions. So
okay, then.
Up to 30 reps, maybe a little bit more. You're trying to get a kind of muscular burn.
Okay.
And kind of, in effect, you're retensioning that area. You're retensioning it to a point where it's effective and comfortable.
Okay. Because for whatever reason, that range within the motion has gotten slack, has gotten sloppy, or never been developed. So you're trying to develop that section where it's losing control of the back.
Exactly.
Okay,
so
then.
Any kind of, pretty much any movement in general is, I've been kind of phasing out, or going more towards gaining more control. So you don't have to do a whole lot of, depending on the movement, it could be 1 to 5 reps. And the primary objective is to gain control and awareness of what's actually happening, and increase your comfort, increase your range of motion, and increase your strength output.
Okay, then. And that specifically works on the lower abs and that's lower lumbar region as well, because that's probably the most susceptible. You always hear of people, and no matter what industry, actually throwing out their lower back.
Yeah. Lower backs are getting beaten up.
Okay.
Or it's potentially not even getting beaten up. It's underutilized. We're not moving around as much as we should be in the ranges as we should be with the awareness that we should be.
Okay.
So because the lower back, anything to do with the spine, is so vital for survival that the brain will put a lock on it. If you're got a potentially sore lower back, it's potentially because the brain thinks, oh no, something's wrong here. I have to really hold on tight, otherwise something's gonna give.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, it's not actually about strengthening. It's about letting your brain know that this area is now safe. This area is now safe. This area is now safe. And that's done through really, really slow, controlled movements, really gradual movements. You're trying to convince your brain that your body is actually functional. And most of the time, the body is very, very, very good at self-preservation.
For sure. I suppose, human beings have evolved for millennia, and we've made it here by self-preservation. And like when you said that, that made so much sense, because it is usually that the lower back seizes up, it gets tight, and you've lost mobility in that, so you're not able to rotate in the way which you rotate on the job, which is odd, because thinking about it, there's a hell of a lot of lower back rotation which we do in the industry. There's a hell of a lot of picking up, your feet stay in the same place or your hips stay in the same place, and you rotate your upper body, and you've often got a load in your arms at the same time as well, whether that's a chainsaw, whether that's a log, whether that's whatever. There seems to be a lot of that.
Huge amount, yeah. And again, because you've shortened that range of motion, like in the harness, you're really lacking that kind of extra give through the legs, ankles, knees, and hips. And you have to kind of compensate with either more kind of range of motion through the thoracic, which is what I would recommend. Like, try to concentrate on getting this area to do the movement.
Okay, so the middle of the back.
Middle and up.
Okay.
Like, this part of your spine should be very, very mobile and able to compensate for you, so your lower back can kind of stabilize.
Okay.
If you're in the harness, it needs to stabilize because that's your base support. So everything up is your actual leverage or movement base.
Okay, then. So I think obviously the back, the spine is one of the probably first places which is most susceptible to injury, to needing remedial work done on it for everyone on the tools. Is there a second? Is it like shoulders that usually flog out first or after the back, or is it knees?
I think it's probably wrists.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A lot of people have, including myself sometimes, the wrists will just get too banged up, really, because we're gripping all day, pretty much every day, and with working on that kind of release, or without working on the opposite side, or even just kind of releasing those muscles that are responsible for the grip.
Okay.
It can get too one-sided.
Okay, then, because you're always tensioning up because I suppose it's your forearms which are then forcing your hand to grip. So then it'd be like the front half of your forearms which are tensioning all the time, but the releasing half, the back half of your forearms, I suppose, not as developed as the front.
Yeah. So the extensors they're generally weak in most of the population in general, but I think in ARB probably more so. But in general, like, it's also rotation. We do a lot of like gripping and rotation, but the wrists are an incredibly complex joint.
Yeah.
And because they're so complex, it's kind of good and kind of bad. Because they're so complex, we can focus on them and do a bit more movements, and it will have an effect regardless of if we've done the right movement.
Okay.
Just by focusing on it and doing a movement, it will help.
Okay, then. So thinking about what you've just said, it is like you need to be strong in your wrists, because you're also having to stabilize them with a weight hanging off the end of them. But then also you're having to have dexterity with it as well, because you're using tools extended out from your body, and it's a weight, and you're having to like have very specific, precise movements with it. Because if you think about putting in your cuts, I suppose, whether it's with a rear handle saw or the top handle, even if you get like your scarf fractionally out because your wrists are somewhat seized up, it makes a massive difference to the way which the job plays out potentially, whether you need to put the cut in again or whatever it is. So is there an exercise, or I feel like it's not exercise. I feel like what you're talking about more is mobility and stretching. Is that a fair way of categorizing it?
If you can do it, you combine strength with mobility, or strength with flexibility. So mobility is, under my definition, is range of motion that you can actively get into and actively put strength into. So any exercise that I would kind of do would be kind of focused on range of motion with strength added into it.
Okay.
So for wrists, there's a video on my Instagram page which just goes through a whole lot of wrist movements where you're just grabbing a stick, basically a heavy-ish stick, and just taking your wrists through different ranges of motion. So that's a loaded stretch. They're usually best.
That's a really good definition of it.
Cool.
Yeah, so having strength across a wide range of movements, like that makes sense. That makes sense, because if you can move it a great distance, but you're not strong at the extremities of it, then it's essentially not that useful to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can work specifically on those end ranges of motion. Like you can work specifically on that end range of strength.
Yeah.
And like, say you find a wrist exercise where you're doing figure of eights, and you find somewhere in that figure of eight it's harder than the rest. Work that area. Hone in on that, because that's where you're lacking.
Okay.
That's why circular movements, figure of eights, circles are so good, because it does give you a really big, broad range of motion that you can kind of discover where your weak links are.
Okay. So people could be doing this with a stick at home, because that adds a bit of, I suppose, momentum and weight to it. Okay. And also, I suppose there's the trend within the fitness industry at the minute of people using the steel maces and the steel clubs, which I suppose is maybe pushing it a bit further, where you've got a lot heavier weight.
They're really good. I've only used them a few times, but they are awesome. I would like to get them.
Yeah.
You can use it with a splitter. Like, all that is you're putting the weight at the end of a lever. I tied my work boots to the end of a PVC pipe and just shifted the work boots up or down, or shifted my hands up or down. All you're doing is playing with leverage.
Yeah. Yeah. So how far away the weight is from your hand.
That's it.
I suppose that's a really good way. I suppose people could start with, if they're using a small hatchet to knock wedges in, that's a good thing, or a hammer. If people didn't have kits like fancy exercise equipment at home, I suppose that's what it actually started out as, was a sledgehammer, not a steel mace. Yeah. That's probably what it was originally. It's just the fashion within the strength and fitness industry at the minute is to have these purpose designed things. But if you've got a sledgehammer in the back of the truck, that's probably a start.
100%, yeah. Or even when you're raking up, like, just get the very end of the rake, do some wrist rolls, and just see what's going on. Like, we've got so many things that we can do with it. It's really up to you.
Okay, that's good. So that's a really, really good starting point. I like that. So yeah, you sharing a few bits of those information on, like, how to actually stay mobile and build strength, also without fancy equipment. That's really handy.
Yeah, you don't need fancy equipment. There's There are some pieces of equipment that I 100% endorse and would get behind completely, like
Okay.
gymnastic rings.
Yes, I've seen some of that on I think it was on your Instagram, of you putting the gymnastic rings up on a tree and you're doing these rotations over the top and then backwards again. I have no idea what the technical term is for that, but it looked awesome.
They're skin the cats. And that's again what we were talking about, like loaded mobility. So that's probably if you can do them, it's, I would say, the number one stretch for us upper body.
Okay, so your shoulders, your pecs, your deltoids, all of that. Okay.
Lats goes into your abs as well, goes to the wrists.
So for people listening at home that don't know what a skin the cat is, can you talk us through it?
Yep. So say you can do it on a bar or on rings. Basically grab the bar, full dead hang, then go to an active hang, which is you press and retract the shoulders. You kind of go into lift your knees. You're trying to bring your hips horizontal with your shoulders and then up vertical above them. And then you continue that motion back all the way down. So your hips start in front of you, go up and end up behind you, and then into like a German hang with your hands, arms behind here.
Okay, then.
So, and then you reverse it.
Okay, then.
So on the way up, you're developing strength in your lats, everything on the top here, your shoulders, your rhomboids, all those. On the way down, you're getting a stretch through the chest, your forearms, your abs. Then on the way up, back, you're developing the strength in the chest, forearms, abs. And on the way down, you're getting a bit of a stretch.
Okay, then. So it sounds because I've obviously seen it on your Instagram as well, where you're essentially hanging and then you've lifted your knees up and then you've completely inverted. So you're upside down and then you keep going beyond that and your legs are extended, but your shoulders and arms look like they're in a very uncomfortable position. Is that something to hold off on until you've practiced this for a while, until you've got, I don't know, the first part of the motion?
Yeah, the most dangerous
quote
is once you go beyond that first kind of half, when you start lowering down.
So you've gone from being inverted to beyond inverted.
Yeah. It's dangerous if you push yourself too hard, like any movement. But the good thing is that if you get to that area and don't freak out and you're like, nah, I can't do this anymore, you can just drop. You release your hands and you drop onto like all fours or whatever.
Or your feet are on the ground. Okay. So that's your get out of jail free card. If you get to that point and go, oh, I can't get back over.
Yeah.
Okay.
And ideally start with a lower bar. So start with something that's just head height where you could, or even below, where you can hang, do that inversion and your legs can touch the ground while you're holding on. And then you can use your legs as assistance to just work it as a stretch rather than strength. So yeah, like you can gain the flexibility in that motion without the added risk of your 100% body weight.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense because it did look quite hardcore when I saw it on your Instagram. but really cool as well, because then when you take yourself all the way back over again, it's like, wow, that's impressive. You look like a gymnast.
It's one of the basic gymnastics movements.
Okay.
For just full shoulder health.
Okay. So if somebody was going to do this, would they, and say they had rings at home with those straps, and say they also had access to a bar as well, like, is there one that's preferable to start off with versus the other?
The bar.
Okay.
I'd start on the bar, again, because rings are more unstable.
Right. So your body has to stabilize more.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Say if you don't have range in that end, like fully inverted portion, and one arm is kind of stuck, with the rings, you can get yourself into a compromising position where they'll just flip. They'll just they'll do the work for you, but you're not ready for that work.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you need to have the strength to be stable during the motion. So, okay, then that's great, because then people going, okay, then I want to give this skin the cat a go, because to be fair, it also looks cool as well as is functional. Don't go to the rings first if you're new at it. Start on the bar, get your strength and stability and flexibility up doing that. Okay. So in your non-work life, so when you're not on the tools, what does your kind of strength, mobility, flexibility routine look like?
At the moment, it's very freeform. Again, because I've been doing it for a fair while, I go by feel. Like if I feel slightly more restricted in a certain area, I'll just go to that area. I'll hone in on that area, kind of find what I think will be benefit of it, and then explore from there. So I might end up, say if my lower back's being weird, I might end up first in a dead bug. And then from there, something else might pop up. Like, oh, my adductor is actually responsible for that instability.
Mm.
So I'll do something for my adductor. I might go to a Cossack squat or a side split. And then I might find something else while doing that adductors. Maybe it's my ribs that are kind of causing that adductor issue. And I really just kind of explore and play.
Okay. So is this like a daily thing? You'll always do a bit of daily stretching or strength, or is it a weekly thing?
It can be like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it could just be a check-in. Like I could do a couple of downward dogs, seal pose, and just see how my body is. And if there's nothing there, and I don't want to kind of have a workout, I'll leave it.
Okay, that's cool. So it's like check in with the body. If there's anything there, do a bit of work on it. If there's not, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Ideally, if you're not really concerned about like adding more strength, if you just want to maintain and keep yourself healthy as is, you don't need a lot.
Because I suppose at the end of the day, working is a big workout.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, especially when you see new people coming onto the job site that haven't done it. Maybe they've come out of, maybe they're an apprentice and they've come out of school and they haven't been, quote, on the tools on a regular basis. You can see that it really takes the toll. Or if you've ever been off the tools for a little while on holiday, and then when you come back, it's hard work.
Really hard work.
Yeah. So I suppose you don't need to supplement that with extra strength if you're not looking for, if there's nothing to fix, and if you're not looking to add strength for any specific reason.
Yeah. Like even coming from the fitness background, the first year doing ARB work was freaking tough.
Yeah.
Like it's a different kind of strength. It's a lot of endurance strength. Whereas originally I was more kind of power based, but yeah, it's tough.
Mm.
So if you don't want to get, if your aim isn't to get the strongest dude out there,
Mm.
all you need to do is maintain, check in, and kind of bridge that awareness between what's up here and what's actually going on below that.
Yeah. Okay. Because I suppose a lot of us, after a big day at work, one of the things you want to do is literally just sit on the couch, put your feet up, and and chill out.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. And some days that's all I want to do.
Yeah.
I'll often try to just check in, just do a little bit of movement. Even if I do zero movement and I just do breath work for 3 minutes, that's gonna make me feel world better.
Okay. So can we dig into that a little bit? Like, what is breath work, and like why does it help, or how does it help?
Um, what is breathwork is basically a focused attention on how you breathe and how you breathe will regulate how you feel. So breathing is one of those systems where it's both unconscious and conscious. It's one of the rare ones where it's both. And we know that if we're in a stressful situation, we'll breathe up into our chest and hard, shallow breaths. Works. Like if you're in a stressful situation, that's what you want. That's what you need. But if you're coming home at the end of the day and you don't need that level of stress,
Mm.
by changing how you breathe changes how you feel. So you can focus on a slower breath into your belly and expand the lower portion and contract the lower portion of your kind of torso. And within a minute, even sometimes within 3 breaths, you'll notice a difference.
Okay. So is this like a physical relaxation? That's the benefit of the breath work.
If that's the type of breath work you're doing, or if that's the type of breath work you want.
Okay. I feel like we can go seriously deep into this.
Yeah. There's a lot of different modalities of breath work, and they all offer kind of slightly different benefits.
Okay.
So that's the relaxation one would be kind of exhaling more than you're taking in, just kind of getting yourself into a rest and relaxed state. Whereas if you want more energy
Mm.
and a clear head and kind of be buzzed, you take in more oxygen than you're exhaling.
Yeah.
And there's different ways of doing that. You can do really sharp, big inhales, or you can do long, slow inhales and really just trying to fill up your belly, chest, and kind of breathe into your head as well.
Okay.
If people are interested in that, there's a guy called Wim Hof.
He's a legend.
Yeah. He's a beast.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Like if you want to experience more of the energized breath work and just dig in a little bit to what the science behind it is,
Mm.
take 15 minutes and just look up Wim Hof.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know there's a lot of people, especially within the ARB community, that are like, breath work? What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's airy fairy, it's mumbo jumbo. But no, there's a very, very clear, definite link between how you breathe and how you feel.
Oh, for sure. Like from a personal perspective, I've consumed a bit of Wim Hof, not heaps, and I've done a bit of that practice because it interests me, and the science behind it, the fact that he's been studied by some really good, very credible universities, and has had electrodes put all over him while he's been stuffed into a tank full of ice, and they've gone, right, his core temperature's definitely going to decrease by now. No, in fact, it's raised. But yeah, so that's fascinating. And also from a personal perspective, doing a bit of free diving and stuff like that, like the fact that you do your breathe up before you dive and you notice a massive, massive difference between when you don't do your breathe ups, or even if you don't do them quite correctly. And even if you come up, get a bit complacent and don't do your recovery breaths correctly, that has a massive difference. So just personally, I can see how valuable like the breath work is, because it got me from, I don't know, like a minute and a half static breath hold in the water to all the way up to like 3.5 minute breath hold in the water. And that wasn't physical fitness change. That was an hour's worth of training, learning how to breathe up properly. That was the difference. But yeah, so from an ARB perspective, like this is a whole topic on itself. Well, for anybody that's doing anything physical, it's a whole topic on itself to improve yourself using breathing. So I think we're going to have a big chat on that at some point in the future, and really dig into it. But so from the, I suppose the more, I want to say more physical side, but it's not, because breath work is physical as well. It just has a psychological benefit to it. But I suppose the physical side does as well. Oh, for sure. But I know that, I think that's what really struck me when I started consuming bits of your content. Like I came across you on Instagram and was like, this is fantastic, because I know that I struggled on the tools because of not doing what I needed to with looking after my body. And then coming across the information which you were sharing, and went, okay, then this makes a lot of sense, and it's something super valuable to the whole industry, and it's something which hopefully people will start adopting if they find it useful, or if they're struggling, that would be awesome. And even if they're not struggling yet, doing it before the fact.
That's the best scenario.
Yeah, for sure. But as a human being, often we don't. We put off tomorrow instead of doing it today. But I suppose to wrap everything up so that people are going away with some good
stuff, I had to break content of info.
Yeah, for sure. So 2 rapid fire questions just to finish it off is, when it comes to all the people out there on the tools, what is the number one strength and fitness mistake you see people making?
Not having awareness of what's going on down here.
So in their core?
In their core, in the lower abdominals, just above the hips.
And how do you see that?
Usually when people are climbing, well, you see it when people are climbing, when people are on the ground, their hips are tilted too far one way or too far the other. And you can see it when they're doing a particular movement, that there's a lack of strength as their base. So they can do the movement, but it's not solid. Like there's instability there.
Okay, then. So that's the first thing people should be aware of, because people are making that mistake. And what is one thing people should incorporate into their routine to help them at work? I think you might have gone into this a bit, but if there was literally one thing that somebody that is strapped for time goes, I want to make myself a bit better, what's that one thing?
I would say it's similar to bird dog and dead bug. Look up how to quadrupedal.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you spell that? QUAD. All right.
QUADRUPEDAL.
PDAL. I'm sure people will be jumping straight on YouTube or Google.
Basically, just moving on all fours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's one stability exercise, which will be super valuable to start implementing. Okay. Then, and I suppose with that in mind, you've actually put together something awesome for everyone that's listening as a bit of a freebie cheat sheet downloads. Okay, can you go into that a little bit?
Yep. Just put together what I consider some of the best movements and movement flows for different kind of areas of the body.
And you've put that together into what looks like a nice PDF document with links to videos and everything. So it's quite a user-friendly way of people accessing that information. So
hopefully people can just have a look, see what works for them, try it out. If you've got questions, more than happy to take questions and help anyone that needs help.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of questions that have tried bits, that have tried other stuff, that maybe also they train personally already and go, how does this fit for like my strength at work? Can you share where people can follow you and find out more?
Yeah, sure. Probably the easiest would be Instagram at ARBFIT. I think you have to search Arborist Fit to find it. And on the bio in Instagram, I've got links to the ARBFIT Facebook page, YouTube, and I'll have a link to that free kind of document as well that you can just get and look at and download. Yep.
Awesome. And what I'll do as well is I'll link up your Insta, your Facebook, your YouTube channel, and also that document as well, wherever this video / audio is going to be shared. But Kyle, this has been absolutely awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. And this has been a lot of fun. Thanks very much, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Absolute pleasure.